head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christys Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christys Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 9 p.m, I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
the only solution is jihad by the armies of the Muslim countries.
tightening the extremism definition sounds like a good idea, but new government rules could make you an extremist. I'll reveal why. And
I think the time for words has come to an end, and we do need to see action.
Suella sounds the alarm, plus
I think there's going to be a May general election. My demand to Rishi Sunak is name the date.
Is a May election actually bad news for Starmer? Also,
this refugee family quickly found in taking up the offer of sanctuary, they replaced a war zone with a different kind of hell.
The BBC has serious questions to answer over an apparent puff piece for a future member of a refugee grooming gang. And
oh, listen, the nation needs to know, will Kate be watching?
If she is, it'd be behind a sofa, I guess.
Kate's uncle dishes royal dirt in Celebrity Big Brother. On my panel is GB News star Nana Acquia, Tory MP Jonathan Gullis and author Amy Nicole Turner. Oh, and what happens next? Yes, I'll reveal all shortly. Get ready, Britain, here we go. Are you an extremist? Next.
I'm Polly Middlehurst, and the top story in the GB newsroom tonight at 9:01, Birmingham City Council has approved a wave of budget cuts that have been described as a devastating double whammy of tax cuts and fewer public services. The Labour-led authorities planning a 21% increase in council tax over 2 years and £300 million worth of cuts to public services. Council leader John Cotton unreservedly apologised to the city's residents, blaming Tory austerity. Birmingham's Conservative leader said, though, the cuts will mean streets aren't clean and broken streetlights aren't repaired. And Jeremy Hunt is expected to ask councils to cut wasteful spending on equality and diversity programmes as he announces Britain's budget tomorrow. It's being suggested he could announce a 2 pence in the pound cut to national insurance contributions. He's aiming to put the UK's economy and Rishi Sunak's popularity back on the road to recovery. That's despite the fiscal watchdog suggesting the government's little scope for tax cuts. And as you've been hearing, Suella Braverman has told GB News she doesn't believe the former Tory MP Lee Anderson is Islamophobic. Today's exclusive interview with the former Home Secretary comes after Mr Anderson claimed Islamists had got control of the London Mayor.
He is not racist, he is not Islamophobic. He's calling out very poor performance by the Mayor of London, who has completely failed to hold the Met Commissioner to account, and which is why we've seen emboldened Islamism in the streets of London. We've seen an MP hounded out of office because of Islamism.
Meanwhile, GB News understands that the policing of a pro-Palestinian protest in London for this weekend remains unchanged. Officers will reportedly use existing public order and anti-terror laws, but it's after Rishi Sunak called on the police to crack down on extremist behaviour. A government minister has paid damages to an academic after suggesting she supported Hamas, but the cost of that payment is covered by taxpayers. The Science Secretary, Michelle Donnellan, has now retracted her comments about Professor Kate Sang after a government investigation found the allegations were baseless. And finally, thousands of staff at Greggs are to get, shall we say, a slice of the profits. More than £17 million in bonuses, evidently. It's after the high street bakery saw profits rise by 27% in the last year. So staff can expect to see their extra dough in their pay packets at the end of this month to recognise their hard work. And it's all the icing on the cake for the workers who already get a share of the profits each year. For the very latest news stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts, scan the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
Welcome along. A message to the Prime Minister. Just boot out the jihadis. It's not hard. France are doing it. They've just kicked out a hate cleric called Majoub Majoubi for saying that the French flag was satanic and stirring up hatred against women and Jews. 15 police officers turned up at his house, and 8 hours later he was on a plane back to Tunisia, despite living in France since the 1980s. Bish bash bosh. He then said, "This would never have happened in Britain." Well, you're damn right it wouldn't. In Britain, he'd be outside Parliament every Saturday with a megaphone. Last Friday, Rishi Sunak stood outside Downing Street and said,
"I need to speak to you all this evening because this situation has gone on long enough."
He also said this to the police.
"We will back you when you take action. But if we are asking more of the police, we in government must also back up that call with action."
In response, the Met Police just ignored him and said they'd carry on doing what they're doing, which is not a lot. But worry not. Rishi Sunak has told Michael Gove to come up with a new definition of extremism. It will come as tremendous comfort to Jews unable to walk around freely that a new definition of extremism is on the way. The victims of the Manchester Arena bombing will sleep easy now. A new definition of extremism is on the way. Here's the mad thing. Because we now live in a society where a politician cannot possibly just single out Islamist extremism, we now end up with guff like this. The new definition of extremism is, quote, the promotion or advancement of an ideology based on intolerance, hatred or violence that aims to undermine the rights or freedoms of others. It will include those who seek to undermine or overturn the UK's liberal system of democracy and democratic rights, and any groups or individuals who intentionally create a permissive environment for extremism would be banned from working with government bodies. Yes, you heard that last one correctly. It turns out that taxpayers have been giving money to key figures in organisations funded by our counter-terror programme Prevent, who are alleged to have supported the Taliban, defended militant Islamist groups, banned in the UK and hosted hate preachers. But there is another problem with this new definition of extremism. The fact is that it might now make you an extremist. Do you believe in women-only changing rooms? You're an extremist. Are you pro-life? Extremist. Are you a member of a conservative religious group? Extremist. There is going to be a new government unit, another layer of taxpayer-funded bureaucracy, by the way, to determine whether individuals or groups have met the above criteria. They're also drawing up a list of foreign hate preachers who will be banned from entering the UK. Great. Apart from that, there's absolutely nothing to change the fact that we can't deport the ones who are already here. And if they came across on a small boat, they'd just get to stay anyway. So, in summary, the police are ignoring our Prime Minister. Our Prime Minister is admitting that the taxpayer has been funding radical extremists for years. The solution to that is to turn ordinary people into extremists. Conceivably, 85-year-old Marjorie from number 42, who doesn't believe in gay marriage, is now in the same bracket as a hook-handed Al-Qaeda cleric. And we're not actually deporting anyone. Rearranging, decking, Titanic. But let's get the thoughts of my panel now. It is GB News presenter Nana Acquia. I'm also joined, of course, by Conservative Stoke-on-Trent North MP Jonathan Gullis and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Jonathan, I'll start with you. I mean, seriously, can we not just deport the jihadis and be done with it? I mean, that's the real issue, isn't it?
Well, I never thought I'd say this, Patrick, but it's time to be more like the French, which is something that should all terrify us that we've got to that point. But you were bang on the money that whilst I'm perfectly happy to see the full detail and review it and engage with the Prime Minister regarding a new definition, ultimately we have already in place laws that say you can't incite violence or hatred, you can't discriminate. We have the Human Rights Act, the Equality Act in that regard. Obviously, you can't also, we have the Terror Act, so for those inciting terrorism. And we have the ability to prescribe, as we already saw with Huzbut Tahrir very recently being added to that list. So for me, it's actually about looking at what laws we already have and ensuring that they're enforced and making sure that chief constables are clearly told, and police crime commissioners, there will be consequences to actions not being taken on the front line. Because it's not the bobbies on the beat, they're the ones who want to impose it. It's the managers in their cushy offices who are all too seemingly happy to pander to the Twitterati, which is the last thing any of us should do.
Yeah, I mean, no, we do already have laws here, like being a jihadi.
Well, yeah, exactly. The problem is, to me, they're just trying to make themselves look busy. So they want us to feel that they're actually doing something about it, but they're just tinkering around the edges. Because projecting, for example, horrible slogans on Big Ben is, I think, the act of people who are being extremist, but they weren't tackled at all. Also, I think when you start changing definitions, all you're doing is you're changing who's determining what is extreme. Because, for example, to me, a man cannot be a woman cannot be a man. You've gone from one extreme of a man to a woman, which is another. That, to me, is an extreme thought that you believe that is true. Yet me, I will be seen as the gender-critical one, yet I am telling the truth. And then there's the final thing, that when you do start changing definitions, it starts to encompass other things. So, for example, about a couple of years ago, they changed the definition of woman to include men who identify as women, which means now it legitimises a man who says he's a woman in a female-only space. If I was to complain, then I'm the extremist, and I think these are the issues. It's not necessary. We have the laws in place. They're just tinkering around the edges to look busy.
Yeah, I'm going to pick up on that, because I think it is just about looking busy, isn't it? We do already have these laws. There is absolutely no need whatsoever. We can see things going on right now before our eyes. We do not need Rishi Sunak to come up with a framework, do we?
I agree with you, actually. I think that this is just because they've seen the Palestine marches over the weekends, and they're panicking. They're panicking about what to do about it. So they think by broadening this definition, we can clamp down more easily on people with actually very acceptable, not extreme beliefs, and we can put them all under an umbrella of extremism more easily. And I think the people that this will affect are groups such as the Palestine Solidarity Campaign. The Muslim Council of Britain have expressed their concerns over this broadening of the definition. And even groups like Just Stop Oil. They could fall under this. They're not extremists.
Well, you don't think
they
are
extremists?
For me, they are.
For me, extremism has to entail violence. At the end of it, it has to create violence.
So would you say standing outside
I think democratically protesting is very different, and we've seen this with the curtailing of protest laws already.
What about climbing on the Prime Minister's personal residence up in Richmond?
Do you mean that was Greenpeace, wasn't it?
Well, that's an extremism in itself.
But it was an extreme act. It was an extreme act, but it wasn't extremism.
Just on the old Greenpeace stuff, that is an active case, so we will leave that one.
Sorry, Patrick, I get in trouble every week when I do this.
And he was out.
So yes, so it obviously remains to be seen exactly what the outcome of that case is. However, the point still stands about some other forms of extremism, like, I don't know, maybe Just Stop Oil are extremists.
Well, they are. I think they're extremists. Obviously, they probably don't want the law to be, or the definition to be changed, because then they'll definitely be in there. But the things they're doing anyway are illegal.
But the thing is...
I don't get why...
I was about to say, I think the one thing we all agree on, ultimately, is that by broadening it to be such a big umbrella, there will be people who simply just have differences of opinions that get caught up in this. And I'm very worried about who gets to determine what extremism is, who is the czar is appointed, and why is their worldly view more correct than anyone else's. It's all very subjective, this, at the end of the day.
But the interesting thing is that Rishi Sunak is the one saying this. It's a Conservative government talking about these British values. This is a Prime Minister who has stood up and, in my opinion, said something very extreme and transphobic, which was his comments about, oh, a man can never be a woman in this transphobic agenda.
Why is that interesting? There's a lot of people on those marches who seem to love all thinking exactly the same thing.
But to suggest that this is going to clamp down on gender-critical views is very not...
You've just proved the problem by saying that he said, you said that what he said, a man cannot be a woman, a woman cannot be a man, is transphobic. It's not, it's the truth.
Well,
biological reality,
It's a reality. If we're going to take that as a definition of an extremist, then I'm one, yet I'm telling the truth.
But the reason I would say that is because the real-world consequences are the impact on trans lives, which have been violent. So that's why I call it extremism. Because hate crimes have gone up tenfold since this whole rhetoric. There is absolutely no evidence that women's rights have been amended or eroded in any way, but there is plenty of evidence to suggest that trans rights have been eroded.
OK, do you want to hit back on the idea that there's no evidence that women's rights have been eroded in any way?
I think that that's absolute poppycock, and you must know that.
Well, evidence it then.
Oh, let me evidence it. OK, let's take Leah Thomas then, who's swimming in a women's game.
College in America.
Well, you've asked for some evidence.
Can you give us a UK-based example?
OK, you want a UK-based example? Well, let me have a think about one. All right, let's take Isla Bryson. OK? Isla Bryson, that is a UK example of somebody who... You asked me a question, I'm going to finish it. Somebody who was then changed the definition or decided that they were now a woman and was going to be sent to a female prison until it became clear that he really shouldn't be going there at all. That's the idea...
Just to drag it back to exactly the point here, under, potentially, this guidance, OK, people who think that that is wrong could very easily be classed as extremists. And that's what we end up with, where people who are very, very vocal about saying, potentially, that a male rapist shouldn't be in a female's prison could well be classed as extremists.
I think...
Meanwhile, can I just say, meanwhile, a jihadi who's come across to this country in a small boat, could still not be deported, which I would argue, Jonathan, is the bigger issue.
Well, absolutely. Look, and I think you well know my views on this issue regarding deportation. And to be fair to the Prime Minister, he is doing everything he can from what I've been witnessing and all the conversations I've had to actually try and stop the boats. It's not gone anywhere near as quick as I'd like to have done. Obviously, I think there's other ideas to the solutions, like leaving the ECHR has absolutely got to be something that we do. But ultimately, I think once we undo the pesky House of Lords with all their ridiculous amendments and the virtue signalling from people like Justin Welby are ignored and resigned to the dustbin of history, then we can actually make sure we get that flight off. And ultimately, like you say, protect this country, because at the moment we've got all these young single males or undocumented coming into this country. We have no idea who they are, what their intentions are, and actually far too many of them are entering the black market, which means that ultimately, you know, they're putting lives at risk as well as pushing or being vulnerable themselves to extremism. And I've seen that in Stoke-on-Trent with his book to here, targeting the hotels where people have been kept and seeing it as a recruiting ground. That is the last thing I need for my city.
Michael Gove coming up with a framework, as far as I can tell, does not do anything about that.
And also, it's like, it's too late, isn't it? Too late along the road, because left-wing extremism, right-wing extremism, all forms of extremism come from the same place, come from a place of alienation, feeling out of step with the society that you're in. So surely we need to get this much earlier, rather than broadening a definition. We need to solve the problem.
Yeah, again, but that is a point of agreement. We need to sort of problem. We keep skirting around it.
But the problem is, where is the centre? As I said earlier, who decides what is extreme? And that is the issue.
I mean, I think it'll be fascinating. I would argue that under these rules now, potentially anyone from any of the country's religions, like major religions, with a more conservative outlook on those religions, so whether it's, say, the Catholic Church or whatever, could very easily find themselves falling foul of being classed as an extremist and therefore being denied any kind of government funding or anything like that, which I just think is bonkers, when really the absolutely overwhelming problem is rampant militant jihadis, and this doesn't seem to do anything with that. Anyway, in a massive shift in tone, it's the latest Great British giveaway, and your chance to win £12,345. Yes, that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in cash, and a whole host of seasonal treats. Here's how it could all be yours.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
Good luck. Now, still to come. After the Metropolitan Police ignore the Prime Minister's weekend plea to clamp down on lawless protesters, Suella Braverman has come out swinging. But is she right that we now need to see action from Sunak, not just words? We'll be hearing from Suella Braverman in about 10 or 15 minutes' time. But retired police officer Norman Brennan gives his unrivalled insight. But up next, though, Conservative MP Ranil Jayawardena goes head-to-head with former Labour speechwriter James Matthewson to find out whether or not the rumoured May election would benefit the Tories or the Labour Party more. I suspect it will benefit the Tories. This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We're only on GB News.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Meanwhile, we've got Prince William getting on with being a real royal, or is he? I mean, this business about being ambassadorial in the Middle East, about the Gaza situation, about the Israeli situation, about trying to be friends with everyone, this is sensitive ground.
It's very demanding, I think. It must be one of the most difficult things he's ever done. He has been to Israel before and the Middle East. He was the first of the royals who went there, and he spoke to the leaders of both in Israel and on the West Bank.
Yeah.
And he managed it beautifully. He managed to carve a very sort of delicate path. I think as well, he doesn't want to cut ribbons. He doesn't want to do the ordinary things, to go round and see people and do it unless he really cares about it. This is people who are homeless. These are people who are in a war. I think he wants to go very, very high up, not for arrogance.
Make a difference in the world.
But to help, and to try and smooth things
Angela,
over.
I might be way off the mark here, but he did not, to me, look a happy man at BAFTAs on Sunday night. There was
lonely, for sure.
Yeah, there was just something about his face that looked like I didn't want to be here.
It did. He did look lonely, but I also thought he made a huge effort so that everyone would enjoy it. He didn't want to pass it on. He doesn't use his personal feelings publicly, whereas Harry, you can tell a mile off what Harry's thinking. So he's done very well for that. And I think because he's been their president since 2010, he didn't want to let them down. Very nice of him. But he's obviously very worried about her. And he's got a lot of pressure there. I mean, he's a man with massive pressure for his father, for his wife, making sure the children are all right. And now he's taken on the Middle East, you know.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
This is Patrick Christys Tonight. We're only on GB News. Coming up, Sunak backs police to front up to the pro-Palestine mob. But are their hands tied? But right now, it's time for our head-to-head. So, Labour's Jonathan Ashworth has been taking the fight directly to Rishi Sunak this morning. So here's what he said.
I think now, after 14 years of the Conservatives, it really is time for change. But I think that opportunity for change is coming because I think there's going to be a May general election. Lots of gossip swirling around in this place about a May general election. And I think Rishi Sunak, and this is my demand for Rishi Sunak, I'm sure he's watching GB News this morning, my demand to Rishi Sunak is name the date.
I'm sure he's quaking in his boots, Jonathan. But with reports today that ceasefire talks between Hamas and Israel have stalled, Labour look set to continue tearing themselves apart, don't they, over this war in the Middle East. And yesterday, George Galloway announced he will support candidates to stand against Labour MPs right across the country, including Deputy Leader Angela Rayner. So, who would a May general election actually benefit more, Tories or Labour? Let me know your thoughts by emailing me, gbviews@gbnews.com. Tweet me at gbnews. While you're there, go and vote in our poll. I'll bring you the results very shortly. To debate this now, I am joined by the former Environment Secretary, Ranil Jayawardena, and former Labour speechwriter, James Matthewson. Ranil, is there going to be a May election, and who will it benefit more if there is?
Well, look, I mean, I clearly don't know. There's only one man who knows what he wants to do. But I tell you this, the Labour Party are going to come majorly unstuck. I mean, they've faced no scrutiny on their policies because they're not the government. All they've had to do is complain. And when people really find out that they're going to hive off money back to their heartlands in London, backing Sadiq Khan's approach to running London, when they learn that they're going to copy the Welsh Government's approach, 20-mile-per-hour speed limits everywhere, and when they hear that they're going to put up taxes, then I think people are really going to say, hang on, I'm not sure Labour's for me.
OK. I mean, James, I think arguably the bigger issue is that if Sunak has an election in May, there is every chance that this Israel-Hamas situation is still going to be going on and Labour are ripping themselves apart on that. Should Jonathan Ashworth be careful what he wishes for?
I'm sorry, am I living in the same world as the rest of you here? We've had 14 years of Tory party government. It's the same Tory party we've had that whole time. Think about the state the country is currently in. Things I know, Patrick, that you and I may disagree on, but I'm sure we'll agree that it's not where we would like the country to be. Who is in charge of the country? Who has been in charge of the country for the whole time?
But James, right now, you've got George Galloway causing you all kinds of problems.
George Galloway is one MP.
The more potent he is.
George Galloway is one MP, and the second that we have a general election, he will no longer be an MP because the Labour Party will win that seat back. George Galloway is a distraction for everybody. George Galloway cares about himself. He's an egotistical maniac. Everybody knows that. But the Tories are using them as a distraction. And the fact that we would talk about George Galloway instead of 14 years of Tory party failure. Jonathan Ashworth knows that if he calls the bluff on this, they can't go to an election right now. They're hoping that more time will give them some way to wriggle out of the failings that they're currently facing.
Didn't quite hear everything you said there, but it didn't sound too nice about George Galloway, so I'll just, for the sake of safety, we'll say he's not here to defend himself. But Ranil, if Sunak had any balls, he'd call a general election in May, he'd get it done, he'd crack open the cavernous wounds in the Labour Party over the Gaza situation, no?
Well, I think you're absolutely right to call out Labour's huge divides on this issue. And it's not just George Galloway, but you've got people like Diane Abbott who are backing Galloway, it seems, from what I've heard. So you're right, there are huge divides in the Labour movement, as they like to say. And, you know, the socialists will be exposed for what they are. The divides on this issue and others will be exposed in an election campaign. And here's the thing, you know, in an election campaign, campaign, I think it's on the Conservative Party to be able to take a positive case to the country. And I don't think we've got anything to be afraid about in that regard. I think we've got a really positive case to take to the country, particularly if the budget tomorrow cuts taxes further. And it's rumoured that there's going to be a further cut to national insurance, helping hard-working families across this country. I think there's a really positive story to take to the country. And the opposite is true. If we don't stick with that plan to cut taxes, we'll be back to square one with higher taxes under Labour if people choose that. So I think there's a real choice there, and I think Labour are going to come unstuck.
What is Labour's message, James, apart from we're not the Tories?
Well, exactly. We need to see that, and that's exactly what we'll see in a general election campaign. I would hope to be seen from the Labour Party right now, to be honest, by this point, if we're talking about potentially going to a May general election, more policy pledges, more direction. You're right, we do need to see more of that. Even people like Alistair Campbell are calling for that from Keir Starmer. So hopefully that's a message that we'll listen to. But at the same time, are we talking about desperate stuff from the Tories to be hearing that we're talking about Diane Abbott? We still talk about Diane Abbott. She's so far removed from the front bench of the Labour Party currently that it's fantastic that we're still talking about her and George Galloway as the only ways to attack the Labour Party. Talk about Keir Starmer. Talk about Rachel Reeves.
Yeah, all right. I mean, I think it's more the case though, that they are going to be standing quite strong independent candidates against some Labour big hitters in areas where there is a large, sizable proportion of the Muslim vote, and a lot of those people are massively in favour of a ceasefire, which Labour did not provide, which is exactly what... I'm literally just saying exactly what George Galloway has been saying, and also one thing that we've been talking about massively on this show for a period of months. I'm
in agreement. I'm massively in favour of a ceasefire myself. I'm proudly pro-Palestinian.
I understand that, but the damage has been done for Starmer. This is my point, James, that if a general election is called in May, there is no way that Keir Starmer has got time to repair the damage that he's done to that Muslim community, is there? So you know, you are in trouble.
They may well lose some votes somewhere, but I do not, looking at that general election, I do not think there was anything to worry about. If they had stood a proper candidate and not cocked up what they cocked up and actually ran a proper campaign with a candidate all the way through, I don't think George Galloway would have won at all.
OK, well, interesting. Obviously, we'll never know, but there we go. Ronald, look, in your heart of hearts, you know, the Prime Minister's probably watching this right now. I bet he is. Yeah. When do you want an election, Ronald?
Well, I'm always happy to go to my constituents and speak to them and see what they're thinking and hopefully count on their support. I'd be perfectly happy with an election in May if that's what the Prime Minister decides to do. I think, as I say, we've got a really positive case to take to the country. I think we can do it on our own terms if we go in May, rather than letting it being timed out towards the end of this Parliament. And, you know, I think it'll also call Labour's bluff here, because really they don't want the election in May. They're saying that they want one in order to try and put us off. I think you know, we could very easily call their bluff.
Ronald, is it not quite devastating that so many of your own MPs are jumping ship before an election? No, I find that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very sad to see people go like Paul Scully, who I think's a great guy, a really good MP for Sutton and Cheam. I'm sure we'll select some really good candidates in place of people like Paul, though, and there are some great people coming through. So, you know, I don't think the Conservative Party is short of new talent. That's really positive.
Look, Ronald, just final one to you on this. I mean, I suppose if they were that confident of general election victory, they wouldn't be going anywhere, would they?
Some people have, like Paul said, he's served in local government, he's served in Parliament for a long, long time. Right. He wants to do something new. I think that's perfectly fair. People want to change careers. People have multiple careers now, and he said he didn't want to retire in politics. So good luck to him.
Or be retired in politics would be another way of putting it. All right, look, both of you, thank you very, very much. We will find out. We've not got long to wait if it is May now. Anyway, all right, that was former Environment Secretary Ronald Warden and former Labour speechwriter James Matthewson. Look, who do you agree with? So the Gaza ceasefire talks have broken down, all right? So that's happened. So you can protest all you want on a Saturday. The fact is, Hamas actually don't want a ceasefire, all right? So who would a May general election benefit more, the Tories or Labour? Rupert says, I honestly don't understand this nonsense. The Tories are finished, they are irrelevant to the UK now, and nothing can change that. I'm probably the biggest Conservative I know, and I want them destroyed. Grief, Rupert, I hope you're all right, mate. All right, anyway, Leah says, the Gaza conflict is more damaging to Labour, but the longer the Tory MP supports Sunak, the greater their damage is too. All right, Peter says, neither. The public have more important things to worry about. Well, they're a general election, Peter. Anyway, your verdict is now in. Right, so 39% of you say a May election will benefit the Tories more. 61% of you think it will benefit Labour. That's really interesting. So the majority of you think that what's going on in Gaza and Israel, I would assume, that's what I would take from that, you don't think is going to have a catastrophic impact, even if that election is in May, whilst it's all still ongoing. Interesting. Thank you very much for taking part. Now, coming up... Excuse me, Princess Kate's uncle could be one of Celebrity Big Brother's most controversial housemates ever. But is it fair for ITV to put such pressure on the princess just as she recovers from serious surgery? Chairman of the UK's leading talent agency, Professor Jonathan Shalit, offers his expert industry analysis. Are ITV wrong to be putting the uncle of Kate in there at this time for the royal family, do you think? And next, after the Met Police confirmed they will ignore the Prime Minister's plea to crack down on inflammatory protests in the heart of the capital, Suella Braverman hits back.
I think the time for words has come to an end and we do need to see action.
Retired police officer Norman Brennan weighs in on the growing tension between the government and our country's largest police force. And at 10, I'll also be talking about the Refugee grooming gang scandal. It's Patrick Christys tonight. We're only on GB News.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my new show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m, where real people get to meet those in power and hold them to account. Every week, we'll be hearing your views from up and down the country in the real world. Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Farage, Monday to Thursday from 7 p.m.
We're always told that there is a huge need for care workers in Britain. We're always told that the salaries just aren't big enough against the benefit system for British people to want to do that work. And there probably is some real truth in that. And yet, if up to 25% of those that come are acting illegally, and it would seem up until now that in some areas foreign care workers come in but bring in almost the same number of family members with them, that we need to have a proper debate about this. I'm very pleased to be joined by Mike Padgham, chair of the Independent Care Group. If I accept those arguments for a moment, how can it be that the system is so lax that up to 25% are found by the Inspector of Borders and Immigration to be working illegally?
Well, good evening to you, Nigel. It was good to join you. I mean, those figures are shocking to me. When I looked at it today, when I saw that 275 visas had been issued to a care home that didn't even exist, and a further over 1,000 people joined a company that only had previously 4 staff in it, it makes me wonder the bureaucracy of the Home Office didn't think to check that these companies exist in the first place, because it should be quite straightforward. If people are providing care, they're regulated by the Care Quality Commission. It's a simple phone call to check and double check. Sadly, there seems to have been very many loopholes at the beginning. I believe that's been tightened now, but I can't understand it, because all the providers that are doing it in the proper way have to go through quite a rigmarole to actually get approved, and it takes months. So it beggars belief that this has happened and people have been approved for a company that doesn't even exist.
Welcome back. Coming up, are ITV shamelessly disrespecting our royal family? But first, GB News can exclusively reveal that the policing of a huge pro-Palestine protest in London this weekend will be no different from usual. That's despite Rishi Sunak demanding police chiefs do more to crack down on extremist mobs in a speech last week. So, talking today, Met Police boss Sir Mark Rowley hit back at Sunak's criticism.
In this context of polarised public debate, I do think sometimes that we're the first people who are able to be labelled simultaneously woke and fascists. We have to police the law as it is, not as others would wish it to be.
Mate, the only people calling you fascists are people who don't want to get nicked for having extremists. Anyway, whatever. But could the Met not do more? Indeed, their policing of a vigil to remember Sarah Everard back in 2021 was slammed for being heavy-handed, with widespread outrage at some women even being bundled to the ground. Well, former Home Secretary Suella Braverman's had enough. She's told GB News earlier today that it's time for deeds, not words.
I think the time for words has come to an end, and we do need to see action. You know, the next day we saw tens of thousands of people take to the streets, chanting hateful slogans and behaving in a totally unacceptable way. And we need to see a step change in the police response. They need to be enforcing the law. They need to be arresting people who are using threatening or abusive language. We need to be holding the police to account in a better way. And I would have liked to have seen an emergency law introduced to actually take steps to restrict some of these marches.
I'm joined now by a retired London police officer of 31 years. It's Norman Brennan. Norman, are the police being properly backed, do you think, or is that weak from Rowley?
The police have not been backed for many years. Mark Rowley is correct. I understand exactly where the public are coming from. I follow social media all the time. They want police to go in heavy-handed. What Sir Mark Rowley just said, and rightly so, is that the police have to act within the law, not how others would wish the law to be, which basically means he has to comply with the legislation made under statute, and some of the public want him to go in with his officers and crack a few heads. Well, the Prime Minister, I'm sure, won't be there the following day when hundreds of thousands of the public are demanding those officers be sacked, suspended and put before a discipline board. So the Met are walking a tightrope.
I think we've lost Norman there. I'd be quite keen to see what everybody here actually thinks about all of this, though, really. I mean, are we seriously in a situation where there is a difference, isn't there, between going in and cracking a few heads, as Norman said there? Oh, I'm afraid we're going to have to go to a break.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Look, you're a respected royal biographer, and there are so many people who are on the sort of royal gravy train, if you will, people who are making a career out of gossip and speculation. But yours very much built on confidence and sources and facts. And you don't offer an opinion that often inside your book. But when you do, I suppose, therefore, it carries a bit more weight. So when you say that the Sussexes are easily offended and, you know, effectively pretty prickly, what do you mean and what have you based that on?
Well, on numerous their riposte to any given situation in their books, in their TV interviews. And let's not forget, there have been a lot of TV interviews, 6-part Netflix drama, Spare. You see time and again that they feel that they feel resentful. They feel that, you know, something hasn't gone their way and that this is part of some sort of calculated campaign against them. And actually, I mean, when you've got a fast-moving story, I mean, for example, in my book, I go into those frantic hours after the death of the Queen, and everybody's trying to sort themselves out. And Harry writes in his book Spare how you know, no one will return his calls, and he can't get through to anyone, and it's sort of it's just all a bit me. And actually, the whole kind of royal machine, if you like, is a team effort. And I just think it's very sad because, you know, Harry and Meghan, they had such potential, and now when we do tend to hear from them, on a royal matter, it's just to say how miserable they were being royal. And that was, you know, they were royal for whatever it was, 600-700 days. They're post-royal now for over twice that time. Can you envisage a scenario where they're back in England and they're back in royal life? I can't envisage a situation where they're back, as it were, as part of the sort of royal working unit, but I could certainly see it becoming a kind of normal thing for them to keep.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Right, OK, so I'm just going to reintroduce Norman Brennan into the fray here, retired London police officer with 31 years' experience. Norman, thank you very much for hanging on the line there. So, Suella Braverman is saying, look, we need to have brought in more bespoke laws to be able to sort out what's going on the streets. Rishi Sunak said he wanted police officers to police the marches and not just manage them. Mark Rowley turns up and says, oh, we're simultaneously called woke and fascist. I do put it to you, Norman, the only people calling them fascists are people with things like paragliders on their back who don't want to get nicked for being terrorists.
You're absolutely right. Look, what the law is under the Public Order Act, it's threatening words, abusive words, and threatening behaviour. And it's also a visible sign or representation. The visible sign or representation is what the paragliders were on the Max of them 2 girls, and the representation was the sign on Big Ben. So all of them are breaching the law when they go over all of what I've just said. However, London is like a tinderbox at the moment. The anger and the hatred amongst the hundreds of thousands, predominantly law-abiding members of the public. If there was, say, 1,500 or 2,000 officers on duty, Patrick, and we had to arrest 250 people, right, went in with the batons, it takes 2 officers per arrest. Suddenly, a third of your contingent of overseeing several 100,000 officers is reduced to such a degree that if other elements within there started sort of basically all-out public disorder, London would be in major trouble, and hundreds, if not thousands, of officers would be phoned at home. All the outside
They just don't seem to have any problem, though, Norman. They just don't seem to have any problem policing hate speech online, or they don't seem to have any problem going round to, you know, people's houses, or when it comes to things like whether or not someone's been a bit nasty on Twitter, or they don't seem to have any problem if you're a Christian preacher in the streets. I just don't understand why they seem to struggle with this stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I share the frustrations as well. But, Patrick, it's not the frontline men and women. And it's the frontline men and women predominantly on social media and on the streets that get criticised. These officers are caught between a rock and a hard place. The majority of them do not want to be there. Every week, their leave is cancelled. They have to miss anniversaries, birthday presents, taking kids to school, etc. These officers want to be on their own boroughs. And these hundreds of thousands of people that are coming week in and week out are depleting the Metropolitan Police.
In Paris, they get the water cannons out, they get the tear gas out, and these things stop. Right? In Spain, we've seen it. In Italy, they do it. You do it once. It's a bit like if we'd have turned that very first boat back that's come across the channel, we wouldn't have this problem now. But we've let it happen. And so all these police officers, with respect, are going, oh, you know, they got the leave cancelled. Yeah, all right, but if they'd have sorted it out in the first place, they wouldn't be here.
It's a management issue. You highlight Paris. I've seen Paris as well, Patrick, and I've seen where the police have gone in heavy-handed, CS gas, batons, and as you rightly say, water cannons, and suddenly there's a riot. Hundreds of cars are torched, businesses are burned to the ground. And I've got to say fair play to Mark Rowley and Patrick. I criticise senior management of the police as much as anyone else. But the thing is, the Met are walking basically around a tinderbox. If that tinderbox goes up, there will be people that may well be killed, seriously injured, businesses destroyed. The Met are doing their best. And I just wish these demonstrators that have said their piece will go home, because unfortunately some elements are walking around and behaving in such a way, it's almost like for a few dollars more. That pocket watch is ticking louder and slower, and the Met are caught between that rock and the hard place, good or bad, right and wrong, and they cannot win. And I think the public have just got to be patient, because the police cannot enact laws that they cannot enforce because the law is not there, and politicians
I don't understand. So what needs to change, right? Because, like, I would expect, and I think the vast majority of the public would expect it to be illegal to go and shout some hateful stuff, like really hateful stuff, outside Parliament, to climb a statue, to graffiti something, to do all of this. I mean, surely that is illegal.
It is. OK, who's going to be brave enough to take that action,
the police,
to make that decision?
Norman, I love you, man, but the police.
Yeah, no, but what I'm saying is that who is within the police going to take it? Mark Rowley is the Met Commissioner.
Yeah,
You've got Sadiq Khan, the Police Crime Commissioner. Nobody can make that decision without being criticised or feeling that what they do is for wrong. They cannot. They're between a rock and a hard place.
They're in the wrong job,
it really is
Norman,
that serious,
aren't they? They're in the wrong job.
Sorry?
You know, if they can't take a bit of criticism for enforcing the law. But look, Norman, look, I appreciate. I'm not trying to disagree with you. I know I don't want it to come across that way. You're a great guy, but
I see your frustration. Yeah. I share your frustration, Patrick. I share that of the public. And there was a time within policing we would rule the streets and we would take them over like the public want us to do. However, policing has changed, and sometimes, yes, there is a bit of wokeness, there is a bit of weakness, and I despair, along with the public, and even the police officers wish that they could do more than what they can currently do.
All right, Norman, thank you very much for your time this evening. We do really appreciate it. It's former police officer Norman Brennan. Right, OK, now look, just a little teaser ahead to something I've got coming your way at 10 p.m. It's the Syrian paedophile gang member that back in 2016 was portrayed as a victim by BBC Newsnight. But first, ITV have drafted the Princess of Wales scandal hit uncle, Gary Goldsmith, into their latest lineup for Celebrity Big Brother, all while Kate attempts to recover from a significant surgery.
Oh, listen, the nation needs to know, will Kate be watching?
If she is, it'll be behind a sofa, I guess.
Well, she has every reason to be hiding, because not only does Goldsmith have a history of being caught giving out hard drugs and assaulting his fourth and most recent wife, he also spoke to the Sun newspaper before even entering the Big Brother house, in which he slammed Prince Harry's racism claims as BS. Fine, but he also did allude to some of the issues that Kate is facing at the moment. And let's be honest, we know why he's gone in there, don't we? I'm delighted to welcome talent management kingpin, Professor Jonathan Shalit. Thank you, Jonathan. Do you think ITV are disrespecting the royal family here?
I don't think reality television works like that. They're simply putting a cast together they think the viewers at home will like and the advertisers all want to spend money advertising on.
Isn't it amazing, though, that the advertisers would be fine to advertise with someone who's been caught handing out hard drugs and getting into a fracas with his fourth wife? That's all OK. I mean, obviously, when Nigel was in the jungle, we couldn't possibly have that. That was obscene, wasn't it?
I think the advertisers are advertising on the brand that's Big Brother. They're not thinking about backgrounds of certain individuals who haven't been committed to criminal offences. But the bigger question is, of course, why he is doing it in the sense from his perspective. I don't mean why is he doing it in a sense. We know he's doing it, as you rightly alluded to, the money. He could be paid very well. But the fact his niece, his sister's daughter, is the Princess of Wales, he should just keep out the limelight and keep his life private. To be embarrassing his family in this way is horrendous. Listen, if we're honest, most of us have got an embarrassing member of our family, but we're not the future king or queen, so it's a bit different.
Yeah, I know, I get that. I mean, presumably, though, you know, you have to look at the situation that's going on at the moment. The king is recovering from cancer. Camilla's knackered to the point where she's going to have to take a break. William is obviously bang up against it. Kate, I mean, goodness only knows exactly what's going on with Kate. And you think ITV think it's all right to plonk in the old dodgy uncle into the middle of that, who's probably going to go absolutely rogue at some point and maybe dish all the family secrets?
I just simply don't think ITV give it that level of thought. I don't think they're sitting there thinking at the highest level about the implications that they put in. The only implication they're thinking of is creating a cast that's of interest. And I'm not sure. Ultimately, we are a democracy, we're a free country. People will vote as they want, and if people don't like him, they've got the chance to vote him out immediately.
No, that's fine. You don't think ITV should have maybe considered the absolute turmoil that our royal family are in now, and whether or not they wanted to add to that by plonking this bloke into Celebrity Big Brother? You just don't think they should have whether or not they did consider it is one thing, but do you think they should have considered it?
Yes, I think you're absolutely right. I think even though they're a corporation, they're full of decent people, and I'm surprised, knowing the trauma that family are going through, that now is considered the right time to add to that trauma. Because I think the thing you're correct about, imagine the pressure right now that forget the princess, his sister's going under, because his sister, being the mum or the grandma of the princess's children, is having presumably to help with looking after the children, because to all intents and purposes we know she's a good grandma. The pressure that family is directly under as a private family, let alone as a royal family, is immense. So having the brother on national television embarrassing the family in the way he is a pretty horrific thing to do to your own family. I mean, to me, that's low life. It doesn't matter whether you've got family who are royal or not. There's some things that are right and some things that are wrong, and it's wrong what he's doing to his family. And I suspect he's probably a complete loner. The way Kate's very classy, as his sister, never talk about him, but I can't imagine he's having Christmas dinner with them.
No, I absolutely can't. Do you think ITV should edit out anything that he says? Let's say he just reveals something about Kate's illness or something like that. Do you think ITV have a duty or a moral obligation to edit that out?
Yeah, I would hope that they would. Well, first of all, I don't think he probably knows that much, because I think his sister and Kate will know he's the one person you don't trust. So I suspect he's basing everything on what he's read as opposed to what he knows. So I can't imagine for a moment they can find him or tell him secrets. But equally, I think if he said anything that could be distressful to the princess and his family, it should be edited out. I doubt he'll last that long. I suspect the public will find him pretty repulsive, doing what he's doing to his family. So I'd be very surprised if he was in for that long.
Well, we'll have to see. He's one of the. I mean, he's got a lot of charisma. Where that charisma comes from, of course, remains to be seen. But look, thank you very much, Jonathan. Absolute pleasure to have you on the show.
Charisma by association, hasn't he? That's the problem. He's nobody in his own right. He's only somebody because of who his mother's daughter married. So his sister's daughter married.
I suppose so, but he is now about to trouser a huge amount of money from ITV on Celebrity Big Brother, so there we go. How long that lasts remains to be seen. Jonathan, thank you.
He's the winner.
Jonathan, thank you. Take care. Jonathan Shalit there. Right, so that's his talent management kingpin, Professor Jonathan Shalit. Right, OK, look, coming up. Big hour. So, as the safety of MPs continues to make headlines, with the BBC's Chris Packham encouraging protests outside politicians' homes, I reveal the sickening email sent to one prominent member of Parliament which threatened serious harm, including the rape of her young son. And next, a Syrian grooming gang has been convicted of abusing a child in Newcastle. I'll review the BBC Newsnight's apparent puff piece on the grooming gang's older member back in 2016 and asking whether or not they now need to apologise. Stay tuned.
Warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Showers today, but they are fading away and most will have a dry night. A little bit of fog and frost likely in the southwest. Low pressure is out in the Atlantic. It tries to move in, but it's getting blocked and stopped by a big area of high pressure. That is the dominant feature, and it is allowing a bit more cloud to drift into the east. We've seen some heavy showers across the southeast. They are drifting away. Still a few scattered showers here and there through the night. A lot of cloud in eastern England and eastern Scotland. Clearer skies further west. That will allow it to turn quite cold. A touch of frost through rural parts of Wales and southwest England, and some freezing fog patches around, so maybe affecting the M4 and the M5 first thing in the morning. Could take a few hours to clear away. Generally quite a grey day again in the east, particularly on the east coast, with a breeze freshening here through the day. A few scattered showers over eastern parts of England, a bit of rain at times in eastern Scotland, mostly over the hills, and some showers creeping into Cornwall later, but much of the west dry and bright through tomorrow with some decent spells of sunshine. 11 or 12 here. Colder in the east where it stays cloudy, and that cloud likely to stick around on Thursday. We'll see a few more showers, I suspect, on Thursday over parts of southern England, then developing through Wales and the Midlands. Some heavy downpours are possible. They'll be hit and miss, but do watch out for a lively shower on Thursday. Again, many places dry, some sunny spells in the south and west, fairly glum and chilly in the east.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
We have a ton of top prizes to be won in our spring giveaway. There's a massive £12,345 in tax-free cash to spend however you like, along with £500 in shopping vouchers for your favourite store, a games console, a pizza oven, and a portable Sonos smart speaker. And the best news? You could be our next big winner, just like Phil.
Whoever wins it next is going to be as happy as I was, and they're going to get even more money this time round, so why wouldn't you go in the draw?
For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats, and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text prize to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th of March. Full terms and privacy notice at gbnews.com/win. Please check the closing time if watching or listening on demand. Good luck.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 10 p.m. I'm Patrick Christys. Tonight,
I felt she didn't want any foreigners in this country, and that is why she made up the whole story.
A refugee grooming gang is exposed and sentenced.
This refugee family quickly found, in taking up the offer of sanctuary, they replaced a war zone with a different kind of hell.
But BBC Newsnight stands accused of doing their PR. Also,
If it's a peaceful demonstration, a non-violent peaceful demonstration, then we in the UK, for all of the laws that have been radically changed in the very recent times, have to preserve that right to protest.
After eco-fanatic Chris Packham said that, this happened. I speak to the MP whose child was threatened with rape. Plus, well, the mob are back at it, and 20% off a new jacket if you admit your white privilege. Well, I've got all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages today with GB News star Nana Queer, Tory MP Jonathan Gullis and author Amy Nicole Turner. Oh, and I will be telling you what happens next here. poor woman. Get ready, Britain, here we go. I blow the lid off a refugee grooming gang scandal. Next.
It's 1 minute after 10. I'm Polly Middlehurst, and our top story tonight from the GB newsroom is that the Labour-led Birmingham City Council has approved a wave of budget cuts in what's been described as a devastating double whammy of tax cuts and fewer services. The plans include a 21% increase in council tax over the next 2 years and a £300 million worth of cuts to public services. Speaking during today's meeting, the council leader John Cotton unreservedly apologised to the city's residents for the budget, but Birmingham's Conservative leader said the cuts will mean streets are no longer cleared and broken streetlights aren't repaired. Well, the news from Birmingham comes just hours before the Chancellor unveils his new budget, with Jeremy Hunt expected to ask councils to cut their wasteful spending on equality and diversity programmes. It's also being rumoured he could announce a 2 pence in the pound cut to national insurance contributions. He's aiming to put the UK's economy and Rishi Sunak's popularity back on the road to recovery. We asked local residents in Glasgow and in East Yorkshire what they want to see in tomorrow's budget.
I'd like to see him listen to the people as well for a change. They seem to give all these promises and never keep them.
It'd be nice for the petrol to go down and stop putting money on council tax and stuff like that. People can't afford it.
Businesses are struggling at the moment, the market's struggling, so I think they just need a little bit of a more stable background in the economy.
Raise your tax allowance, because now some pensioners are going to find themselves in a tax bracket.
Well, in the United States, where Donald Trump is expected to dominate today's Super Tuesday, where voters in 15 states are choosing their preferred presidential candidate, he's been speaking. Mr. Trump's only remaining challenger, Nikki Haley, is struggling to secure enough votes to stay in the race. But the former president's path to nomination faces various legal troubles, with 91 ongoing criminal charges across 4 states, most of which he denies. Scientists have revealed the case of a hyper-vaccinated man who's reportedly received 217 COVID jabs. The 62-year-old man from Germany received the staggering number of vaccinations, he says, for private reasons over 29 months. Researchers heard about the man in a newspaper and asked if they could study his body's response to the multiple jabs. They say, despite his extraordinary hyper-vaccination, no noticeable side effects have been found so far. And finally, if you were a fan of soap operas in the 1990s, you will probably remember this. You singing along? Well, that became the world's most watched TV series during its original run, and now those red bathing suits and that slow-motion jogging across Californian beaches is set to return. It's a new series of Baywatch, and it's been commissioned by US TV network Fox. And we will see a whole new generation of lifeguards embarking on daring ocean rescues. The original series ran for a decade, from 1989 until 1999, and made superstars of its cast, including David Hasselhoff and Pammy Anderson. It's expected to premiere this autumn. For the very latest stories, do sign up for GB News Alerts. Scan that QR code on your screen right now, or go to gbnews.com/alerts.
I'm reporting this because no other television news channel will. Be warned, the following information is distressing. A grooming gang of refugees from Syria and Kuwait raped and abused a child in Newcastle, passing her around like a toy. Huzaifa Al-Aboud and Omar and Mohammed Badreddin subjected a 13-year-old girl to repeated rapes, taking it in turns, leaving her physically and emotionally scarred for life. They groomed the young girl, plied her with alcohol and took turns raping her, while another individual, Kuwait national Al-Saumi, pictured third from the left, laughed at her. They threatened to kill her or take her out of the country if she spoke out about it. They tried to convert her to Islam. She started reading the Quran, and the court heard that in return they repeatedly raped assaulted and abused her. The Bedreddin brothers also pleaded guilty to violent disorder in relation to a BLM march in 2020, while they were on bail for the sex offences. But this story somehow gets even more shocking. Omar Bedreddin was previously acquitted of a different sexual assault charge in 2016, and BBC Newsnight, who claim they've been following the story of the Bedreddins since they arrived in the UK, decided to do a full feature on them. It was released the day Omar Bedreddin was cleared of that previous unrelated sex charge 8 years ago. That feature is still available on YouTube, and it is called, unbelievably, To Hell and Back, the story of one Syrian family given refuge in the UK. The idea that Omar Bedreddin had been through hell in Britain was repeated in tweets promoting the feature. It follows their journey of being accused of sexual assault. In the piece, the BBC claims the refugee family, quote, quickly found that in taking up the offer of sanctuary, they had replaced a war zone with a different kind of hell. Omar then claims that he thinks the girl made up all the allegations against him because she didn't like foreigners. He said,
I felt she didn't want any foreigners in this country, and that is why she made up the whole story.
Omar raped a girl on numerous occasions when she was so drunk she was vomiting and unable to stand up, and even after she'd told him that she was self-harming. The BBC Newsnight piece also makes the claim that Syrian men, in many ways, were less sexually experienced than the girls they were supposed to have attacked. The BBC journalist said Omar told her he'd never even had a sexual relationship of any kind. Now, the BBC Newsnight reporter, Katie Razzle, wrote after they were initially found not guilty of sexual assault in 2016, Omar Bedreddin's father, Marwan, in the public gallery, began to cry when he heard the verdict. But when I walked into the Bedreddins' home this afternoon, there was little celebration, and the tears shed were not of joy. The family told me ever since their son's arrest that they'd felt humiliated and dishonoured. In Syrian culture, this type of accusation is so damaging to their reputation. Omar is now serving 18 years for multiple counts of child rape. His brother Mohammed is serving 13 years. Of course, the BBC were unaware of the awful crimes that he would go on to commit. But it doesn't end here. Al Aboud, who was convicted of 2 counts of rape, assault by penetration and assault occasioning actual bodily harm, was sentenced to just 5.5 years. Al Salmi, guilty of 3 counts of sexual assault and assault by penetration, got a suspended sentence. There is no talk of even trying to deport these monsters. In fact, we asked the Home Office if they were considering it. They told us it wasn't really their responsibility before the Ministry of Justice referred us back to the Home Office, who then eventually said that those eligible will be deported at the earliest opportunity. It's a circus, isn't it? The BBC's documentary on a member of this vile refugee rape gang is still online. This grotesque case highlights several things. We are giving refuge to some people who rape and abuse children. Our state broadcaster stands accused by some people online of doing a PR job for these people. The BBC denies this, of course. But where is the BBC Newsnight follow-up on this story? The other things it shows is if people come here and rape kids, we still don't deport them. Sickening. The BBC has said in 2015 and 2016, Newsnight followed the story of the Bedreddin family, who were Syrian refugees who were settling in the UK. During 2016, their son Omar was tried for sexual assault and he was found not guilty. 2 years afterwards, in 2018 and 2019, Omar Bedreddin and his brother Mohammed committed multiple counts of rape. They were found guilty and were jailed last week. The BBC reported this. In any situation, the BBC can only report on the facts as they stand at the time, which is what we did in 2016. The Bedreddin's subsequent crimes are appalling, and we express our sincere sympathies to the victim. Let's get the thoughts now of my panel. I'm joined by GB News presenter Nana Acquia. I've got Conservative Stoke-on-Trent North MP Jonathan Gullis, and I've got author and broadcaster Amy Nicole Turner. Jonathan, I'll start with you. I mean, we are clearly importing some people and giving them refuge who then go on to commit crimes like this. And it appears that the BBC tripping over themselves to try to, at the earliest possible opportunity, do a nice bit of PR.
So first of all, I reiterate the point I made earlier, Patrick, which is we have particularly young single males who are undocumented. Over 75% are coming illegally via small boats. We have no idea who they are. We have no idea if they've committed any crimes in their country of origin. We have no idea what their intentions are. Therefore, they are posing a danger and a risk to the residents of our great nation, and they should be automatically detained, not kept in a hotel where they're allowed to wander off and disappear into the night. That's happening far too regularly, which is why we must build our detention capacity and then make sure that schemes like Rwanda are getting off the ground as soon as possible. Now, with regards to this particular case, if we have to do some deals with countries like Syria in order to immediately return these people, then we should be willing to do those deals. In the end of the day, Syria is holding, I think, 25,000 foreign national offenders who went to fight on behalf of with ISIS, and you know some of those will be British. And whilst I don't want those people to return, if there's a deal to be done that we bring the British people back here and they serve life in prison in exchange for us being able to deport people who have come over here and have obviously, literally, as we've heard, raped a 13-year-old girl, then ultimately that's the type of deal that I think we have to have that honest and frank conversation about.
Does BBC Newsnight, Nana, have to do, with due prominence, now that this has happened, do you think they should be going and doing something like this and reporting this? They put a story on their website, from what I could see.
Well, I think they should really... I think they should put a bit more detail in because, first of all, the fact that they were following this family and then this kind of happened around about the time they were following them. So this whole... The initial court proceedings must have been happening when they were filming. But there were many, many clues. As I listened to that, there was a bit where he said that he'd never had a sexual relationship. This is an 18-year-old. And that he's never even seen two people kissing. And then there was another bit where it turns out that the son that they'd left behind, the family had left one of the sons behind, and this son had now been killed, which was very sad, but apparently it was because he was an Islamic fundamentalist. And they couldn't wait to keep telling us about the far right. And there were other elements of this as well. And I actually was quite incensed with the way they kind of Newcastle came off, because I was born in Newcastle in 1971, and we were literally the only black family there. And we loved it. I loved it. But we were the only black family there, as far as I could see, and we were treated incredibly well. So I just find the whole thing was real insult to the people of Newcastle as well.
Yeah, the way they kept cutting to images of the EDL marches and stuff like that, rather than actually understanding the outrage.
Yeah, I just find it absolutely remarkable of all of the things that would have been going on in 2016 at that particular time when that BBC Newsnight episode, it's like they couldn't wait to get this out there. And I find that astonishing, and now it's massively backfired. Amy, should the BBC apologise? Should these people be deported?
I honestly, I want to make a couple of points. So there is a problem at the moment with false rape accusations being levelled at asylum seekers. There's problems in Ireland, there's problems in Cornwall, so I can see why there would be interest in a story about asylum seekers being accused of rape. However, they did, unfortunately, get it wrong. But like they said, they can only deal with the facts at the time, and they did say that they updated the news, so I don't really think they apologise. Moving on to should they be deported, so 1 in 4 women are raped in their lives, 1 in 6 children suffer sexual abuse. So I think that shows that violence against women doesn't have a nationality. So we just need to make it clear before we put out, like, I fear this story is a little bit of a dog whistle about the threat from asylum seekers.
The programme was a dog whistle. I thought the programme
when actually the reality is, women are at risk of sexual assault.
The reality is, Amy, that this is a refugee rape gang.
It is, but there's just as much likelihood that it could have been a white gang from Glasgow as we saw in November. But we are focusing in on a case with asylum seekers. No, that's what the story. That's the story we are discussing. The story we're discussing tonight. And it is true that in society at the moment, we do have a problem with there's fear that asylum seekers create more crime, which is just statistically untrue.
Well, no, I think the fear is that you're letting people in who you don't know their background. That's the problem. So the ones that are going to come here illegally, which they have done, they are already breaking the law. So a lot of them may well be. But
I think we need to focus on the good of that Syrian resettlement scheme. That resettled 20,000 people and was fantastic and had real success. And the majority,
well, they should have done a programme on that, then, shouldn't they?
Let's do a programme on that.
They should have done that.
Should the government? I think it was under David Cameron when this lot came in. Should the government apologise to the family and indeed this third? Well, she's not 13 anymore, but the girl who had to suffer at the hands of these people that we threw our arms around.
I think, first of all, the government should absolutely look into the particular case of this family. I can't remember about the older brother who was left behind.
That was in the...
But I'm not disbelieving you. I can't recall it. But ultimately, we should be able to look into that and give answers about why this particular family was granted, out of all the Syrians that were seeking.
But it's not the BBC, is it? Is it not more about...
But with the BBC, because I think, look, at the end of the day, the BBC does jump quickly on the bandwagon to kind of push this progressive agenda.
But he'd been cleared.
When actually, what they don't do is actually think about the story itself, about the fact that grooming gangs, which they didn't really report in proper numbers, are predominantly, in the words of Sajid Javid when he was Home Secretary, in his case, it's far too many Pakistani grooming gangs are leading the way, and there was far too much woke PC policing. They didn't want to call it out for what it was. And Stoke-on-Trent has sadly had its own case where one of my own constituents has sadly lost her life to alcoholism, having been the victim of a grooming gang. The individual is walking free on the streets of Stoke-on-Trent, unable to actually get justice for the family that was the victim in this because the accused...
You've kind of summed up my point there, because you've linked Pakistani grooming gangs to some Syrian men. You're basically saying foreigners are grooming gangs, and that's what I'm hearing.
There are lots of grooming gangs of all races.
OK, all right. Now, in a statement given to us just before we went on air tonight, the Home Office said foreign nationals who commit crimes here in the UK will face the full force of the law, including deportation at the earliest opportunity for those eligible. Right, coming up, should Brits be made to do white privilege tests to get 20% off a North-faced coat? All right, I mean, personally, I don't think not, but anyway. My panel return to debate that. I've already got to go. They're warmed up now. Here we go. All of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. But next, BBC poster boy Chris Packham says he has no problem with intimidating protests outside MPs' homes. Now, amid a rising security threat, I sit down with an MP that received a vile anonymous email wishing harm against her own son. It's Patrick Christys tonight on GB News.
Headliners. Tomorrow's papers tonight. Every night from 11 p.m.
Welcome back to Headliners. And Paul, we're going to get straight into Monday's mail for some good old-fashioned, traditional male breastfeeding.
To answer the question, what is the latest woke hell, Josh? Row as hospitals say hormone-filled milk from trans women who were born male is just as good for a baby as the real thing. It's possible for men, if they pump themselves full of estrogen, to grow larger breast tissue, and they often do.
Or you just eat lots of burgers.
Exhibit A. And once you've done that, it is actually then possible to express or lactate a liquid. OK, if to that liquid you then add another load of pills, medication, chemicals, whatever, that lactation juice can be fed to a baby.
We don't really... This is not for the sake of the baby. The baby has no benefits from this whatsoever. The studies are very weak on it. It's a bit worrying because, you know, when hospitals started indulging in homeopathy and having, the NHS had homeopathic hospitals, that was worrying because they're supposed to be a trusted authority. And before saying something like this, there should be an awful lot of study done.
I want to shame this hospital. This is
whether it's necessary.
University Hospital Sussex NHS Foundation Trust. That's who it is. And they have written one of the stupidest sentences I have read aloud in the 2 years that I've been privileged to do this show. It says, the term human milk is meant to be neutral and not gender biased.
Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
That's incredible.
Yep.
Oh, my God, we're laughing at you.
I mean, and as someone says here, babies are not props. And that's the scary thing. And when we're not focusing primarily on the health of a baby.
No, but the feeling of a person doing it rather than... It's a bit of an odd way to go, isn't it? So...
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria DiPiero, bringing you
PMQ's Live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's Live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews at gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Welcome back. Now, I speak now to the latest MP facing chilling threats, even towards their own family. More and more MPs' homes have been targeted by protesters recently, but according to the BBC's Chris Packham, this isn't really a problem at all.
Do you think it's going too far to go to an MP's house?
Well, if it's a peaceful demonstration, a non-violent peaceful demonstration, then we in the UK, for all of the laws that have been radically changed in the very recent times, have to preserve that right to protest.
Well, Downing Street has since branded those comments irresponsible and intimidatory. And the widower of murdered MP Jo Cox also hit back at Packham, calling it a clear act of intimidation. And just this morning, a prominent MP shared a truly sickening email that was sent anonymously to former Education Minister Dame Andrea Jenkins. It says, "Dear Dame Jenkins, I hope you're doing well. I've been facing anti-Semitism for a long time in Morley. That got your attention, you dirty little posh white slut. Hope your little boy Clifford is getting molested at school by his black and brown nannies. That would teach you a thing about multiculturalism. Maybe he might get raped by a refugee. We know where you are and your filthy little Clifford, and we hope Hamas comes for you lot." So, obviously, we weighed up whether or not to read that out, but I think it's important to get the detail out there. I'm pleased to say that Andrea Jenkins joins me now. Andrea, how are you?
Just hearing it again, Patrick, actually. I'm a strong person, Patrick. This is about my 9th one now. I've had people walking down Morley High Street threatening to blow me up. I've had 8 emails from one constituent, which the police dismissed. I had to get the Home Secretary at the time involved, telling me to buy a stab vest. I've had the C word used and telling me to be filled with barbed wire, die in a pool of my own excrement. It just goes on. And every time people get let off, Patrick, and they said it's not a credible threat. And I'm sick of it, to be honest with you. But today is the only time I really wanted to quit, Patrick. They've gone after my little boy. And people like Chris Packham, you know, he could end up with blood on his hands one day, Patrick, because, you know, when you've got MPs that have their families at home, I've got my little 6-year-old who I adore, and I've got CCTV and everything, and people pulled my fences down before, and it's just, you know, you should not invite people to go to your home and protest in that way. It's irresponsible of Chris Packham.
I mean, yeah, obviously Chris Packham will say, look, it was peaceful protests he was talking about. I think, you know...
But it's still identifying the MP's house, which then becomes a target for the people.
Which then becomes a big... Yeah, and I suppose it's the knock-on effect, isn't it? What was the police response like to an email that you received, which, again, sorry to say this again, but, I mean, it did threaten your own child with rape?
Well, my team didn't tell me immediately. They wanted to deal with the police. They was trying to protect me, but obviously I'd rather them tell me, because then I can put measures in place. I can understand what they was doing, definitely. So they tried to handle it, bless them. And then I got told this morning, and I just felt numb. I felt sick, and I burst out crying. And it's not like me. I'm quite a strong person. And I phoned the police, and yeah, fair play. You know, the people I'm speaking to, they're doing their full investigation. But, it was probably looking at the time of the email to be told the person was probably drunk. I'm sorry, but that's no excuse.
No excuse.
And I'm sick of it time and time again to say that things are not a credible threat. And I'm really angry about this, Patrick, actually. I adore my boy. I live for my little boy, like most parents do. And he's 6 years old, for God's sake. And the way they wrote that, they're obviously against Israel for saying, oh, that got you attention. Obviously racist. They keep saying about hate crimes. You know, is this not a hate crime, for God's sake? And they keep saying, and look at the end where it said about Hamas. So I think that sort of speaks volumes of the kind of person this is. But I'm sick of it. Look at the streets. It's not just about MPs, Patrick. It is about everybody on the street, up to here with the two-tier policing system. And I want to see the Prime Minister, every police force, the useless Mayor of London get a grip of every police force around the country. We need zero-tolerance policing. No crime should be small enough that it isn't punished. Everybody's had enough, and we've got to get a grip, Patrick.
So you've had a lot of death threats, basically,
Yes.
and some really vile things.
Yes.
And
I mean, the worst one was in the hairdressers. I was on my Morley High Street, the hairdressers. My niece was getting married the next day, so I was getting my hair done. And I was phoned up by the police, stay there, somebody's walking around Morley High Street threatening to blow you up. And I said to the hairdressers, have you got a back door in case I need to run? Then I was thinking, God, how do I keep them safe? And it was horrible. And then the guy said, oh, it was a joke. I hate the Tories. And he got let off. And I'm just sick of this, Patrick. You know, it shouldn't be one rule if you know, does this happen to Labour MPs? Do they keep getting let off? I'd love to see the stats. Because they keep getting let off, the people with me.
I'm just going to introduce actually something. This is, by the way, not as not as graphic as I suppose as what happened to you now. But I believe we've got a picture. It was another development that happened earlier today. So this is Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's constituency office in Surrey was graffitied with "Die Tory Scum" just a day before he announces his crucial spring budget.
Disgusting.
Is this part of being a politician now? You know, are you now fair game in all of this? You know, and this is just seen as okay now, is it?
Well, do you know? I mean, during the 2019 election, somebody graffitied on my office, Andrea, why don't you just kill yourself? And do you know the only newspapers would pick it up? It'd be the centre-right newspapers, you know, the Conservative newspapers. The BBC didn't pick it up. Nobody did. And that's why I get so annoyed, these double standards. And I think the sad thing is it's a true reflection of society, and I think the general public feels this as well. They feel quite helpless. And the thing is, I've had that many now, I become numb to it. And that is a sad reflection of society, Patrick. And nobody should be in that place. Society should not be in that place.
No. Very fine. Is your son okay? I mean, presumably.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't know about it. He's a happy little 6-year-old, bless him.
Yeah.
And the police, thankfully, have been in touch with both the schools, and so fine.
Well, Andrea, thank you for coming on and, you know, sticking your head above the parapet on it and revealing, you know, just the reality, frankly.
I'm not going to give up on this, Patrick. I'm going to fight even more now. They're not going to silence me.
Well, thank you very much, and good luck to you, and obviously stay safe.
Thank you.
As well. As Dame Andrea Jenkins there, very, very moving indeed. Look, coming up, it's a bit of a different topic for you now. 20% off outdoor retailer North Face if you admit your white privilege. Are they now the most ridiculously woke company in the UK? My press pack gets stuck into that. And, of course, I will have all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages coming your way in just a sec. Stay tuned.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQ's live here on GB News. Every Wednesday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions when Rishi Sunak and Sir Keir Starmer go head-to-head in the House of Commons.
We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQ's live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel. I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. It's time to bring you all of tomorrow's newspaper front pages. Let's do it. All right, so we start with the Metro. Palace's anger at Kate Date Clanger. Now, this is an embarrassing falling out between, well, the royal family, basically, and essentially the government, because it appears as though the government revealed that Kate was going to be back in royal duties in June. They've now hit back on that. We will talk about that in more detail shortly. Let's go to the Daily Telegraph. Tax cuts spark election talk. Hunt slashes national insurance by 2p, giving £450 in workers' pockets. Giveaways cause speculation that he might go to the polls in May. Scott's Tory leader furious as oil and gas levy is extended. There's quite a bit on the front page of the Telegraph there, including our very own Alison Pearson, who says we must bring Muslim women into the fold, not isolate them. Interesting. Now, The Guardian. Hunt defies public services alarm with pre-election budget tax cuts, which is apparently quite difficult for me to say. Basically, the Guardian in not wanting tax cuts. Shocker, really. Anyway, Palestinian prisoners abused by Israel, says UN report. Let's go to the Eye. Labour fears Tory budget trap as Hunt cuts national insurance by 2p in giveaway. I remain unconvinced that we're going to get a huge amount in the budget, but hey-ho. Right, OK, let's get stuck into this all now with my press pack. I have, of course, got GB News presenter Nana Queer, Conservative MP for Stoke-on-Trent North, Jonathan Gullis, and author and broadcaster Amy Nicole-Turner. Now, let's talk first about the Palace's anger at Kate Date Clanger. What's really going on here, Nana? I think it seems to be a bit of an issue, doesn't it?
Well,
really?
I think apparently there was. I think somebody announced that Kate will be there for Trooping of the Colour in June, but then it seems that that hasn't been confirmed. So the Palace have not backed up that claim that she'll be back in action then. So that's what this is about.
Yeah.
There seems to be a bit of confusion as to when Kate will be returning.
I think she's binned it off because she's gone into hiding since Uncle Gary turned up on Celebrity Big Brother.
I mean, he's potentially going to be quite a menace for them, to be fair. We did do a section earlier on about whether or not ITV will write to plonk the nutty uncle in there. But there we go. Jonathan, look, do you think that everyone needs to just back off and leave Kate alone? I mean, the fact is that, unfortunately, it does appear like the date is getting pushed back and back and back.
Yeah, look, I mean, abdominal surgery is extremely intrusive and, of course, painful in terms of recovery. And so I think, ultimately, she just needs to be given the space to recover, and she'll return when she can return. She's shown she's dedicated to her duty, as is her husband. And I think we should all need to respect their privacy of what is a difficult time.
Well, on that note, let's move on, because if you want to bag yourself, this is not one of my giveaways, but if you want to bag yourself a 20% discount from outdoor retailer North Face, you will first have to complete an hour-long lecture on racism and diversity. This is not a joke. So the recently launched Allyship in the Outdoors programme aims to bring awareness of how people of colour can feel excluded from nature and encourages participants to recognise their white privilege. It claims that white people have better access to transport to reach the mountains than people of colour. This is not... this is just what... I'm just reading out what it says, right? And it gives examples on how you can be such an activist, right? Telling people off for making racist jokes. I mean, well, yeah, obviously, but reporting colleagues to their manager for using the term woke.
Whoa, I'm going to be busy.
Nana, has North Face gone south here?
Oh, they're just, honestly... So what I did this afternoon was I tried to take this test, to see whether I was a racist or not. I took the test. The test is for white people, by the way, so clearly North Face haven't considered that black people might do it. And there were things like, the first, it starts off by saying, how many people of colour have you seen on the slopes? Listen...
On the slopes?
On the slopes. And the reason I don't go on the slopes, yeah, and they may not have noticed it, but black people have got this melanin in their skin to protect them from the sunshine, which is why we're black. So we obviously like the heat. So we have an inbuilt mentality to like the heat. I hate the cold. Most black people I know don't really like being in the cold. I think that would be the first reason. And then it talks about people of colour 3 times more likely to live in a deprived area and blah, blah, blah. It is literally sort of indoctrinating a racist narrative to you. And then there are these other people of colour who are there. Nobody's as dark as me, by the way, on there, although I'm the lightest in my family. And there are these people there, and one girl saying, and I used to put on my hat, and because my hair was so big, I couldn't get the hat on, and it became a thing, and I'm like, well, listen, if North Face are making the goddamn hats, they should have thought about
Whose fault's that?
Exactly. So it literally goes on like that. And then there are questions where if you don't give them the answer that they want you to give, you don't move on.
They don't make you do it.
You can't go on until... So I had to go back because I thought, well, I'll just answer them. It comes up, and you have to then go back and answer and then you can carry on. So I answered...
And then you get 20% off a jacket.
No, I couldn't get to the end.
You could just go to Bicester Village
I couldn't
and
get to the end because there was one bit where you could freely say what you think. I freely put down something that I don't think they liked, and I literally could not. I moved on to the next bit, and I couldn't go beyond it.
Jonathan, you have looked as though you're about to punch a wall during all of this.
Living in a bad dream, Patrick. I can't believe this nonsense even exists. Like, to basically say you must answer the questions with the answers that we want you to
if you don't
answer,
do that, you can't move
otherwise
on.
you can't get your discount, is indoctrination.
Exactly.
But who are they
Racial
to be doing this?
profiling
Yeah,
of people of different racial backgrounds, which is racist. It goes against the Human Rights Act and the Equality Act, so I suspect that should be investigated. And it's just woke nonsense. And God, and you know what, North Face? Contact Rishi Sunak and report me for being really nasty. Report me to my boss. Report me to the 70,000 people of Stoke-on-Trent North kids go and talk because I used the word woke, and just jog on and do one. If I could F and Jeff, I would, because I'm so exhausted
it's the white privilege
of this
bit.
nonsense. White privilege is
They
not
define
a
that.
thing.
They define it as though
Come
it's
to
fact.
Stoke-on-Trent and tell some of the people that I serve, some of them, sadly, who are the most deprived parts of the country, that they're somehow privileged when they have got 50% fewer bus journeys than people in, like, London.
But there is a conversation to be had about white privilege, but not by North Face. Like, this for me, I can't even defend this. I found this incredibly annoying, especially when you think about what North Face is. They sell overpriced clothes to posh people.
I'm doing Adam Brooks.
And they're fast fashion. They've had their factories have been linked to all sorts of, like, questionable labour practices. They are not a good company to be virtue signalling. Oh, my God, I said it!
It's happened! GB hero, Amy Nicole Turner.
North Face has done it! Get Amy Nicole Turner. This is it. We've reached the peak of wokeness. We reached out to North Face for comment, and we're yet to hear from them. So there we go. But it is. Can I just ask? No one was clamouring for this, but now North Face, Nana, will be able to say to I don't know, presumably a shareholder, that look, see, we've done our bit to get more black people in the countryside.
Well, that's what they think, but I mean, listen, I don't know I'm black unless you tell me I'm black, and I think it's really bad. Now I'm going to go into the countryside, and they're like, "There's one of them there! Quick, let's..." You know, it's ridiculous.
There is a debate.
I don't want that.
There is a place for that debate. There's a commentator, Iman Aiton. She talks about this really well, but I don't want to hear North Face do it. That's my point.
This is not true, though.
About this whole countryside racism.
White privilege isn't real, everyone.
There's no such
just
thing.
to be clear.
I mean, I don't agree with that.
I'm very privileged.
The pin goes back in the grenade, everybody. Now, a 71-year-old cleaner in Wales has been caught on camera shoplifting. Sorry, correction, She was actually lifted by a shop. The grandmother and mother of 3 can be seen. Oh, bless her. Oh, no.
The bag
That would be terrifying.
That's not going to hold her
onto
down.
her shopping trolley as her coat is caught by the shutters, lifting her up and leaving her mid-air.
She doesn't look that old.
Oh,
to
she's
me.
there for so long.
Oh, God, she's coming
bless
down.
her. Luckily, a shopkeeper rushed out. I mean, that...
See, that's Britain. We help each other.
That's...
Well, no, I think he'd get sued. It's his shop.
Oh, bless. Oh,
He
bless
picked
her.
her up,
Oh,
look.
just one more. Sorry, one more.
I hope she got
Can we
20%
watch it one more
discount.
time?
Oh, hoist it up.
I hope she got a 20%
I love
discount,
this bit,
Patrick, in the
look,
shop.
lifting.
Oh, she's the way she clings onto the trolley.
bag,
Let
a
it
little
go, love. Let it go. Anyway, right, OK. Coming up, should the woke Archbishop Justin Welby be stopped from spending £1 billion on slavery reparations? We discuss the fall of the Church of England. That's in tonight's Greatest Britain Union Jackass. But next, Braverman comes out swinging for Lee Anderson.
Lee Anderson is a great colleague of mine. I'm totally abhor the accusations that have been launched against him. He is not racist. He is not Islamophobic.
I'll bring you more of our exclusive interview with the former Home Secretary. This is Patrick Christys tonight. Oh, I'll have some more front pages for you as well.
GB News Breakfast. Every day from 6 a.m.
Yeah, so describe the contents of the letter for us, because it is quite strongly worded, isn't it? And it suggests that your property is empty. And what do they suggest it's going to be used for?
They say, as part of this process, Northamptonshire Council is identifying empty properties and sites within the area, with the aim of encouraging owners to bring premises back into use or to find alternative options for derelict sites. The resettlement team in Northamptonshire Council supports asylum seekers and refugees across 3 different projects: Homes for Ukraine, Afghan resettlement and asylum dispersal. At present, we are seeing a considerable increase in positive immigration decisions being made in favour of asylum seekers. So basically, they're wanting accommodation. But who goes around and assesses whether these properties are lived in or they are actually empty?
Clearly, Ted, no one had bothered to come and look at your house at all, had they?
What do you want now? Because clearly you are both very shaken by this letter, and that letter that you received in response has not gone far enough. Do you want an apology? What more do you want to see?
Well, she said here that she's, I sincerely apologise, this Lindsay Bellchambers, but I don't see, there was no explanation as to how they've come to say this property was empty, whether it was disused, whether it was unkempt, or what. If you go back through the history of the property, it's not been empty.
Welcome back. It's time now for some more of tomorrow's front pages for you. Daily Express first. Hunt's tax cut gamble will put £900 in workers' pockets. All right, I'll believe it when I see it. Now, we go to the Daily Mail. There we go. Now, 5 SAS soldiers in murder probe over jihadi death. I'm going to be going into this story in a bit more detail in just a second for you, so stay tuned for that. The Sun. Party girl. I'll put Harry Vegas snaps on OnlyFans. Grief. See 2012 Prince in the Buff. A party girl called Carrie Royale, yep, there we go, let that one sit there, is threatening to sell never-before-seen photos of Prince Harry naked at a Las Vegas bash. She vowed to post them on her OnlyFans adult subscription site and teased, I have some nice pictures of him in the buff. That's an exclusive, apparently. I mean, to me, that does sound like a woman who is desperately trying to get a bit of money off Prince Harry, but hey, I could be wrong. Let's go to the Mirror. Meghan put stick in the spokes. All right, so Prince William, Harry and Kate's happy bond was shattered when Meghan Markle arrived on the scene. This is who else? Gary Goldsmith, yes. He's accused the Duchess of putting a stick in the spokes. He is, of course, the one in Celebrity Big Brother. There we go. Right, OK, now look. I am, of course, joined with my panel. Fantastic stuff. I'm going to go in with this, and we are reading this the first time, so I'll read the detail to you as I get it here. But this is in the Daily Mail. It's on the front of the Mail. 5 SAS soldiers in murder probe over jihadi death in Syria. So, apparently 5 serving SAS soldiers are facing a possible murder charge over the death of a suspected jihadi in Syria. In a case that provoked fury inside the Special Forces, top brass have alleged that the troops used excessive force and should have arrested the man instead. The soldiers do remain on active duty. They're adamant that he posed a threat and intended to carry out a suicide attack. According to the Special Air Service, obviously SAS, a primed suicide vest was found nearby, but the suspect was not wearing it when he was killed. OK, the soldiers are remaining on active duty. They are adamant that they've done nothing wrong. I mean, Jonathan, obviously, you know, we are reading this for the first time, so and we are like everybody else on this. We will wait to see more detail. But I mean, it does have a whiff, does it not, of our armed forces being thrown under the bus potentially?
Well, look, for me, when we're deploying the SAS of all regiments of the armed forces, ultimately they're there to do the most serious jobs, the most dangerous jobs, and when they're deployed, they're not deployed to make arrests, they're deployed to take out people. As we heard in the documentary when it came to the hostages being held in this country at the Iranian embassy in the past. So ultimately, I think we have to bear that in mind, that these troops are there to shoot to kill, they're not there to capture. And ultimately, they were doing and made judgment calls in that moment. And I think it's always best to trust those on the ground that they made a judgment call, and ultimately, we hope 9 times out of 10 it's proven to be the right one.
Isn't it the case that it could potentially be a war crime, and you have to be sure that it was within the law for this to take place? Because although they're in combat situation, they need to still be within the law, and that's
within
important.
What, though? It's just within.
Well, we can't endorse war crimes. Is what I'm saying.
They are. I mean, look, the special forces. They've gone down and they've seen in Syria. This is in Syria as well. There's a suicide vest nearby. There's a guy who's a jihadi, and they have executed him to make sure that he cannot carry out his crimes. That's if they want to encourage people to join the army, the armed forces, the SAS, and things like this. This kind of behaviour is not going to.
We saw an issue with our actual armed police officers recently, where one of them was put up on a murder charge, and then a load of other armed police officers down their weapons because they said, well, this could happen to me, and I've got a wife and kids or whatever, I don't fancy getting done for murder in line of duty. Look, it remains to be seen the exact details of all of this, and no doubt it will be covered quite extensively on tomorrow's shows right here on GB News. So I'm just going to park that there for now, because in an exclusive interview with our political editor, Christopher Hope, Suella Braverman responded to the accusations of Islamophobia levelled at Lee Anderson. Here we go.
Lee Anderson is a great colleague of mine. I'm totally abhor the accusations that have been launched against him. He is not racist. He is not Islamophobic. He's calling out very poor performance by the Mayor of London, who has completely failed to hold the Met Commissioner to account, and which is why we've seen emboldened Islamism in the...
All right, so that's Suella Braverman there in a bumper exclusive with our political editor earlier on. Jonathan, should Lee be welcomed back into the fold?
I want Lee to return to the fold, but I do think that he was clumsy in his own words in regards to the specific comment he made about Sadiq Khan, and I think that some form of apology should therefore be given for the clumsiness on that specific point, not about Islamism and the dangers of it, not about the poor policing on the streets and the two-tier policing. And Lee Anderson is certainly not an Islamophobe and not a racist. And so I hope that if we can just get past that very specific point made to Sadiq Khan about being controlled by his mates, which I think was over the line, then we can move on.
OK, I mean, what did you make of what Suella Braverman had said?
Well, I think she's right. People are too busy chucking out labels, calling people names. He's certainly not racist. Lee Anderson's lovely. I've met him, spoken to him on many occasions. I think people are just too quick to jump on a bandwagon. I know what he meant when he was talking about Sadiq Khan, because he couldn't understand why Sadiq Khan is so inactive with all the things that have been going on. So I think it's down to him whether he wants to apologise. I don't know whether I would if I were him, but I think the Conservative Party need him back. And they should get him back. I've heard people on the other side saying much worse things, like Angela Rayner calling people scum and all this thing. That's even worse.
It's not even on the same level as what happened to her. I think Suella Braverman feels somewhat responsible for what Lee Anderson ended up saying, because she kind of planted this seed with her piece for The Telegraph, which said, oh, whatever about Islamism. And then Lee Anderson took it clumsily put it out there, but he did suggest that a Muslim mayor has Islamist mates. Come on,
Well,
how is that not Islamophobic?
Yeah,
and if it was me, I would say Suella should lose the whip
It's not
as well.
Islamophobic. Do you know what? What's the definition in your head of Islamophobic?
Creating an idea that Muslims are in some way a threat, an irrational fear of Muslims.
Well, how is that what he's just said there?
Saying that
How does
because
that
you
work?
are a Muslim mayor, you are in the pockets of Islamists, extremists, in the pockets of extremists, just by merit of being a Muslim yourself.
I don't think that's really what he was saying. I think he was more saying that because of the inactivity of Sadiq Khan, with all these things that are going on, it feels like there are people around. And let's be honest, Sadiq Khan has done speeches where there's been 9. I think he's had 9 speeches where he's been around people who are Islamic fundamentalists. So, you know, that's not to say that he knows them, but let's be honest, even David Cameron pointed out some of his links.
We have had so much hate and so much Islamophobia coming out of the likes of Suella Braverman when it comes to the marches.
So where has she said something Islamophobic? Then what has she
calling
said?
the pro-Palestine march hate marches.
They are hate marches.
Saying London is. But you know by now a minority of people who take part in those marches
It's not a minority,
perhaps are hateful. But you have to admit by
Then
now
why do the majority
are
still
not.
joining
And it's
those
highly
marches with the hateful minority?
It's inflammatory.
It would be like you join.
And the pin goes back in the grenade because
I hate North Face.
it's time to virtue signaling. Right, it's time to reveal today's greatest Britain Union jackass. All right, Nana, who's your greatest Britain, please?
It's got to be Gary Goldsmith going into the Big Brother house.
Greatest Britain?
Yes, going into the Big Brother house, and he's prepared to stand up for the royal family. Thank goodness somebody can, and say his piece, and he absolutely loves them, and clearly he loves Kate, so that's good.
I like the fact that we used a picture of him outside court there. Anyway, all right.
Is that right? Is that what it was?
Jonathan, who's your greatest Britain?
Mine is Howard Cox, who's a dear friend of mine. I know he's a friend of the show. He has been championing for Fair Fuel UK now for 14 years. He has managed to make sure for the 14th year in a row we've had a freeze on inflationary increases. Okay. We've kept the 5p cut in fuel duty. That is going to save people money at the pump, and I think that he deserves a big shout-out.
All right, good. So, Amy, who's your greatest Britain?
It's Kate Winslet. Because
all right. We're going to elaborate. It's all
I was waiting for the picture. There she is. For putting out some concerns about the weight loss drug Ozempic and saying it might not be the quick fix everyone's saying, because I've been feeling this for a while and have a few concerns about it myself.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Look, actually, genuinely, all great chat.
Hands up on it. I'm using it at the moment
myself,
and I've lost 1.5 stone to date so
But at
far.
what cost? And what happens when you come off it and it feels like you're going to be on it for the rest of your life?
Hang on a second.
We'll see what happens.
Doesn't he look well?
He looks brilliant.
Right,
I'm so jealous.
Thank you, Patrick.
But listen, but you're not condoning taking that stuff because it's awful.
All right. He's sat right there. Right, great. Right now, my winner, I've gone rogue again. I'm sorry, Base. I will stop doing it, but it was Dame Andrea Jenkins because she came on before and said what she said. So sorry, everyone.
Amazing.
Right, very quickly. You've only got a few seconds. Quickly, your Union jackass.
North Face of their bullshit stance and that ridiculous quiz that they put on their website.
Right, strong stuff. Go on, Jonathan.
Justin Welby, or Woke Welby, for continuing to virtue signal. Imagine if the Church of England spent £1 billion on maintaining church buildings, investing into their communities, where most churches sit in the heart of the community, rather than trying to virtue signal.
Yeah, we got it.
Well, quickly then, you better.
We're not going to win now.
It's J.K. Rowling for laying bare at last her transphobia by calling my friend.
She's a hero.
She's a hero. She's amazing.
Right, the winner is North Face.
Yeah.
There we go. Right. Thank you to my wonderful panel. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening. Please do go back and check out what we did at the top of the 10 on the grooming gangs issue. I'll be back tomorrow at 9 p.m. for more of the same.
Oh.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office for GB News. Showers today, but they are fading away and most will have a dry night. A little bit of fog and frost likely in the southwest. Low pressure is out in the Atlantic. It tries to move in, but it's getting blocked and stopped by a big area of high pressure. That is the dominant feature, and it is allowing a bit more cloud to drift into the east. We've seen some heavy showers across the southeast. They are drifting away. Still a few scattered showers here and there through the night. A lot of cloud in eastern England and eastern Scotland. Clearer skies further west. That will allow it to turn quite cold. A touch of frost through rural parts of Wales and southwest England, and some freezing fog patches around, so maybe affecting the M4 and the M5 first thing in the morning. Could take a few hours to clear away. Generally quite a grey day again in the east, particularly on the east coast, with a breeze freshening here through the day. A few scattered showers over eastern parts of England, a bit of rain at times in eastern Scotland, mostly over the hills, and some showers creeping into Cornwall later, but much of the west dry and bright through tomorrow with some decent spells of sunshine. 11 or 12 here. Colder in the east where it stays cloudy, and that cloud likely to stick around on Thursday. We'll see a few more showers, I suspect, on Thursday over parts of southern England, then developing through Wales and the Midlands. Some heavy downpours are possible. They'll be hit and miss, but do watch out for a lively shower on Thursday. Again, many places dry, some sunny spells in the south and west, fairly glum and chilly in the east.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
We're springing into spring and giving you the chance to win the seasonal essentials. First, there's an incredible £12,345 in tax-free cash to be won, plus a spring shopping spree with £500 in shopping vouchers to spend in the store of your choice. And finally, a garden gadget package to enjoy, including a handheld games console, a portable smart speaker and a pizza oven. For your chance to win the vouchers, the treats and £12,345 in tax-free cash, text GBWIN to 84902. Text costs £2 plus one standard network rate message, or post your name and number to GB03 PO Box 8690 Derby DE1 9TT. UK only. Entrance must be 18 or over. Lines close at 5 p.m. on Friday the 29th